Are you looking for peace of mind at your doorstep? Look no further. With the Blink Video Doorbell, your home's entrance is always within your control. Check out the link in the video description to learn more and get your Blink Video Doorbell on Amazon. Your home is in your hands.
What is the point of the SNP? In the wake of the worst election result in the party's history, it ought to be the future of the Conservatives under examination. However, it is the spectacular implosion of the Scottish nationalists that is prompting questions about where that party goes next. The Scottish results on July 4, an electoral reversal dubbed the Independence Day Massacre, marked the SNP's poorest performance at the ballot box since 2010. But in number of seats conceded, the party's drubbing was much more stinging. Last Thursday, the SNP lost more seats in one night than in every previous general election put together. Now, the nationalists have turned on each other. Joanna Cherry, defeated in Edinburgh South West, took Nicola Sturgeon to task on ITV's election night results program, complaining about her leadership style. Former deputy leader Jim Silas branded the ex-First Minister Stalin's wee sister. Tony Giuliano, the loser in Falkirk, blamed the handling of the Michael Matheson iPad scandal, saying, "An MSP found to have breached rules on parliamentary expenses must never again be protected, quite the opposite, they must be removed from office." Alan Smith, who lost in Stirling and Strathallan, described the backing of Matheson as the defense of the indefensible and precisely the sort of issue we used to destroy Labour for. While this might resemble the usual finger-pointing and bitterness seen after an election defeat, the cracks below the surface run deeper. It was Sturgeon who decided to make this election a de facto referendum on independence, and while she was long gone when the time came to draw up the SNP's manifesto, John Swinney decided to put the issue on page 1, line 1, with the declaration, "Vote SNP for Scotland to become an independent country." Others questioned whether this was prudent. Equating a vote for the party with a vote for independence might motivate pro-independence electors to turn out, but it also gave a hostage to fortune. A particularly low vote share would be seized on as proof that enthusiasm for independence had dissipated. In the event, this is exactly what happened, with almost two-thirds of Scots voting for pro-union parties. The de facto referendum strategy was a desperate roll of the dice by a desperate party, one conditioned by the poor strategic calls made during the Sturgeon years. Her Supreme Court gambit put beyond doubt that only Westminster has the legal authority to hold another referendum. Unable to be candid with their voters and say that the party would have to wait for another 2014-style opportunity to arise, the nationalists pretended that they could force the UK Parliament's hand if Scots just sent another squad of nationalists to the Commons. July 4th was the day that fantasy collided with cruel political reality. Incapable of delivering for their hardliners on the Constitution and yet too fixated on it for floating voters, the SNP put itself in the worst of all positions. In effect, its platform was, "Vote for us and we'll bang on some more about that thing we have no control over." They were no longer talking about independence as viable, but discussing it the way Trekkies do their favorite starship, with an obscure single-mindedness decipherable only by fellow fans. We now know how much support that approach can command, less than a third of the vote. What happened to the SNP's heaving electoral coalition, which brought in disaffected Labour voters, countryside Conservatives, and middle-class public sector workers more interested in competence than ideology? After 3 straight victories at Westminster and 4 at Holyrood, that coalition is crumbling. The Labour Party has dragged itself out of the political wilderness. Its former heartland voters in Scotland have decided to give it another chance. Centre-right voters in the Borders and the North East have the Scottish Tories, who aren't really centre-right at all but less centre-left than the other parties. If you're fed up with the SNP's disregard for rural Scotland, you can scrawl your cross next to the Scottish Tories knowing they'll direct the occasional swipe at the nationalists. Where the SNP's stock has really plummeted is with barra-dwelling millennials, those aged between late 20s and mid-40s and living in a new-build estate. These are the devolution generation and many have no MEM.